morning, buenos dias, bonjour, sin ciao, ni hao. What's up? Welcome back. We're doing chapter 8 today. We're going to do a summary, brief recap. Then we're going to dig into some line-by-line analysis, more of a close reading, really get into the bits and pieces of it. And then finally we'll finish up with vocabulary. Chapter 8 is the start of section 3, the waiting room. And there's a little more going on in this chapter than some of the other chapters, so this recap might be a little bit less brief. Our narrator sees 3 new bodies on the wall, a priest in his cassock, and 2 people who are identified as being gender treacherous or gender traitors. Presumably they're LGBTQ people who've been executed, so there's shades of Nazism and persecution and oppression. She sees a group of econo-wives, so this feels like a reference to class and a lower class of people that still exist in Gilead. Turns to the house, and it's almost as if time has stopped or frozen without Offred there. Commander's wife is still in her garden. Nick is still washing the car. Rita, the Martha, is still in the kitchen. It's as if the whole world has sort of waited for her. She returns with the chicken. Rita sort of cuts up or dismembers the chicken. She prods at it. There's going to be some foreshadowing, I think. And then upstairs, Offred is ambushed, she says, by the commander. Let's get into some of the deeper, more line-by-line reading stuff here. So the chapter starts, as usual, with a significant or almost hint-like series of words from Atwood. She tells us it's good weather, almost like a June day. And this leads on to later in the paragraph where we find out, no, something's off. It's not actually June. Offred felt like it was June, but Glen tells us it's May. It's a beautiful May day. Note that they're having this conversation about the pleasant weather when they're passing by a series of bodies hanging from a wall. Atwood's not going to write May Day and not pun or play with that, right? She's a poet. She loves this kind of stuff. The way it's presented to us is as a flashback to the narrator with Luke, and he's again sort of mansplaining or being pedantic, telling her what's what. This is not an autobiographical book. Margaret Atwood knows her vocabulary and her words as well or better than anyone else using the English language. If Offred's being lectured to by Luke about what the meaning of Mayday is, we've got to remember that this is not Atwood. This character Offred is someone else. It's a kind of foil. Offred learns that Mayday comes from the French, right, like M''AIDEZ. Narrator and Glen having this conversation about pleasant weather and beautiful this and that. It's a kind of Mayday, right? They're sending out these distress signals, these unspoken words of fear, of help, of pleading to get them out of this hell. So then we get this little interaction where we hear the sort of formal greeting, and they say to each other, under his eye. Of course, there's a reference to Big Brother and Orwell in 1984 and the totalitarian state watching. But then there's also this reference to under the eye of God. Third meaning, or another layer of this palimpsest, is the idea that as women, they're constantly under some unknown his eye. There's all these various levels of hierarchy of different men who have power over these women, and their gaze is constant. When Offred gets back to the garden, there's a little bit of wordplay and some color reference. We see these tulips that are red, empty chalice, and we hear they're redder than ever, so that they're more in bloom, more fertile. This yearning, this desire that's not happening, right? These flowers bloom, burst up, explode at their most red moment. We also learn a little bit more about the commander's wife, Serena Joy, here. We find out that Serena Joy was also a sort of nickname or a sobriquet, and that her real name, her given name or legal name was once Pam. So this may be, I don't know, a reference to like the cooking oil brand or a cleaning product. We also find out that Serena Joy was really a big deal celebrity, She was on the cover of Time, on Newsweek, the kind of person there were profiles about. So she's famous, right? She's a celebrity. Now here she is, she's trapped in this mini domain of her garden. And she's wilted like the flowers, her spine is bent. Comparison of her to sour milk. That she's been wasted. She's the produce of the animals or of the earth or of nature, and her milk hasn't been used, so she's gone sour. She's off, right? She gives off this bad smell, the smell of defeat. Inside the house now, we find out a little bit more about Rita and the Martha character. We're told that she's envious of Offred, and then Offred is envious of her. So it's this idea of people in their roles, and women especially in their roles, being pitted against each other. She's envious that Offred and the handmaids can go out and walk around. Fred, of course, is envious of her for being able to cook and clean and take care of herself. Whereas Offred, we'll see, is literally getting bathed by people, right? So she's an adult, but she's treated like this precious object. She's not allowed to be independent or in control of herself. There's also a scene where when she gives the chicken to Rita, Rita starts insulting it. She says the chicken's scrawny and it's bony, and she kind of pokes at it with a knife or feels around in the empty cavity. And this is going to be some foreshadowing, because the chicken here is symbolically is Offred. The chicken is a symbol of the handmaid. It's a symbol of the fertility. It lays eggs, and here it is. It's bony, it's empty, it's literally hollow inside. One other little note here about the moment in the end where she feels ambushed by the commander in the upstairs hallway. A dish towel that's blue and white striped, and it gives this reference, I think, to the old American flag before Gilead. Fred tells us it's kind of a flash of normality, or like something she recognizes, a moment maybe where she thinks of the stability that they used to have under a democratic federal America. Sideswipes her, this feeling of normalcy sideswipes her, ambushes here, comes at her from the side. And then moments later when she goes upstairs, the commander is there in the hallway, close talking her. And this too feels like some sort of parley or ambush, that he's come at her with a hostile attack. He's even said to resemble an animal. Its hackles up or its teeth bared, predator and prey scenario where the commander is coming at her. She asks us, as Atwood often does, leaving the chapter on a question or a little bit of a cliffhanger. She says, was he invading? Was he in my room again? Holy cow, we got a lot of vocabulary this week. A cassock, like the priest hanging from the wall. A cassock is what the priest wears. It's that traditional black outfit with a little white collar and a little choker piece. Gloating, so we're told Offglen might be gloating. Gloating is sort of reveling in one's own success, being a show-off. Dressed usually means to be sort of worn out or worn down, like a pair of distressed jeans that have been rubbed clear. It also means literally to be stretched thin or to be pulled apart. So we imagine that's kind of what's happening to our narrator, right? She's being pulled apart, taken into pieces, distressed. Bereaved is to be deprived of a loved one, usually through death or a long absence. This idea of being in mourning, or to be separated or deprived of this person you love. And so it's again a reference to Offred's constant yearning or feeling like she's missing her people and her emotions and her love. Sanctity just means holy. It means something that is a holy site, a holy object, something that has been sanctified is pure. Quagmire is another bit of wordplay. There's double meaning here, so it can be a soft, mucky, uneven ground. Quagmire is also like a confusing or a complex problem, like a mental problem, a logical problem, and it's got your thinking all twisted up. Treachery. So here there's this idea of betrayal of trust or deceptive action or nature, and the idea of gender treachery, of course, means that parley. And so a parley is when, during a war or a conflict, the two opposing sides meet to discuss. So discuss a possible peace or to discuss disarmament or some sort of terms of agreement. In other words, Offred's wondering, is the commander trying to make her a deal? Well, that's it for the long and hopefully adequate vocabulary list. If you have anything else, just ask a question. No worries. Thanks so much. We'll be back with chapter 9.